There is something you've been doing every second of your life, and perhaps you've never stopped to notice. Something so constant, so automatic, that it went unnoticed, and yet it's precisely that which is shaping everything around you. That something is the way you observe, not what you think, not what you say, but the subtle frequency with which you witness reality. And what if your whole life, your relationships, your patterns, your repetitions, even your failures, were responding to this, to that silent gaze you cast over everything, including yourself? And what if it wasn't about fighting more, nor about positive thinking, but about changing the lens through which you see what happens? Today, you're going to access a hidden truth that can flip the key to your vibrational field, because reality isn't punishing you. It's simply reflecting the way you observe it. It's not the universe that's silent. It's your gaze that may be stuck in an old mode, addicted to seeing what's missing, what threatens, what needs fixing. In this video, you'll be invited to break this cycle, to observe from another place, a place more neutral, more conscious, more aligned. And perhaps, at the end of this journey, you'll realize that it was never the world that was blocking you. It was only your way of seeing that needed to be released. Almost no one notices. But the way most people observe the world is contaminated, and that is the invisible error everyone makes. A subtle, silent error, but one with deep consequences. Observing life from a place of fear, judgment, and distraction. Observation, when done without presence, turns into a distorted mirror, and that mirror begins to project repeating patterns, even when the desire for change is genuine. From early on, we were taught to look outward with distrust, to identify problems, predict threats, seek what's missing. This programming created a scarcity lens that became almost instinctive. Without realizing it, we began to observe everything with a corrective gaze. We look at ourselves seeking flaws. We look at others expecting disappointment. We look at the future with the shadow of the past. And the more we look this way, the more reality shapes itself to confirm that frequency. It's not magic, it's vibration. What you observe constantly, with emotion, with judgment, with dense attention, begins to repeat. And it repeats not because you deserve pain, but because the field understands that it's important to you. Your attention is the password that activates or deactivates patterns in your field. And when that attention is stuck in reactive automatisms, it becomes an invisible anchor that prevents the natural flow of life. Imagine someone who observes their own body critically every day. Even if they desire health or well-being, their constant observation is loaded with rejection. The field reads that energy as an instruction and begins to reflect imbalances, tensions, symptoms that echo the dominant vibration. The same happens with money, with love, with time. You want one thing, but you observe the opposite, and the universe responds to the observation, not to the desire. This becomes even more evident when we look at distraction. Most people don't observe the present, they react to it. They live with a fragmented gaze, trapped between what has already happened and what hasn't yet come. That absence creates a diffuse field, without clarity, where everything seems like repetition. And when repetition becomes the norm, the spirit falls asleep. Consciousness loses its creative power and starts merely confirming what it already knows. The problem isn't only what you're observing, but how you're observing. In a hurry, with fear, with guilt, with expectation. Each of these emotions is a frequency, and each frequency is a message the field understands. And even when it seems you're just looking, in reality, you're coding reality with your internal reactions. This invisible error is so common because it doesn't hurt immediately. It seeps in slowly. It becomes a pattern. And a pattern, when repeated long enough, starts to feel like identity. You don't notice that you're trapped in an old way of seeing. You only feel that life isn't moving, that the same challenges return, that the same cycles renew, and that alone is an invitation to conscious observation. A silent call to return to the point where everything begins, your gaze. Modern culture doesn't teach how to observe. It teaches judgment, competition, the pursuit of the next stimulus. This external acceleration empties the internal gaze, and when you don't look inward with truth, everything outside loses meaning. Relationships become shallow, work becomes a burden, experiences lose color, because presence has been replaced by survival. To truly observe demands courage. Courage to see what is there, without filters, without escape, without projection. And more than that, it demands vibrational responsibility. You begin to understand that each gaze is a vote on reality. Each focus is an energy channel. Each attention is a silent creation. The invisible error everyone makes isn't not knowing. It's not feeling. It's continuing to observe with the same eyes, expecting to see something new. It's insisting on observing with the energy of fear while asking for peace. It's carrying judgment in your gaze while seeking love. The key lies in consciousness. When you change the way you observe, you also change how life responds to you. Because reality is always listening to your silence. Observing seems simple, but behind that silent act lies a code, a vibrational language that invisibly instructs the universe. When you observe something, you're not just seeing, you're encoding. You're emitting a frequency that carries intention, emotion, meaning, and the quantum field, which responds to information even before form, begins to reorganize according to that silent emission. In modern physics, this is known as the observer effect. In experiments like the double slit, it was found that the mere presence of an observer changes the behavior of particles. When no one observes, they behave like waves, endless possibilities. But when someone observes, they collapse into a specific point, becoming matter, concrete reality. This isn't just theoretical science. It's an accurate metaphor for how your consciousness acts in the world. But long before science quantified this phenomenon, the ancients already knew. On Thoth's emerald tablets, for example, there are teachings about the power of the mind over matter, about the correspondence between planes, and about the principle of mentalism. Everything that exists begins in the mind. Reality is a mirror of consciousness. What you hold in your inner field begins to echo externally, not as magic, but as vibrational coherence. When you observe something with intention, with presence, with surrender, that observation becomes an energetic instruction. It doesn't just influence reality, it converses with it. The universe doesn't understand words, it understands states. And the state you activate when observing is the password that determines how the field will respond. That's why the act of observing must be reclaimed as a sacred art, not an unconscious automatism. Imagine someone observing a flower. If they just look with haste, with indifference, the flower remains a common image. But if they observe with presence, with subtle attention, something changes. Time slows. The flower reveals details that were hidden, and more than that, the observer themselves transforms. Because what's observed with depth also reveals the observer. It's a process of vibrational mirroring. Reality shows what your frequency is emitting. This is the silent code of observation. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. But it shapes everything. It shapes the encounters you have, the thoughts you access, the emotions you repeat. It even shapes the paths that open or close before you. Because observation, when loaded with judgment, activates resistance. But when loaded with presence, activates flow. And the universe always responds precisely to the vibration you sustain at the moment of looking. This means your observation is collapsing possibilities every second. When you look into the future with fear, you're giving form to fear. When you look at yourself with compassion, you're creating a field of healing. When you observe the now with gratitude, you're vibrating in alignment with what you wish to expand. Each gaze is a choice. Each choice, a seed. And each seed, a new line of reality about to emerge. So to observe is more than an act. It's a code that the universe decodes perfectly. That's why when you change the way you observe, not only does perception transform, reality itself begins to reorganize. People change. Situations take on a different tone. The same places look different, not because the world out there changed, but because your inner field is emitting a new instruction. The mind, when trained to observe consciously, becomes a bridge between the invisible and the manifest. And that bridge is the place where miracles happen. Not miracles as extraordinary events, but as subtle realignments that make everything begin to flow. When observation becomes clear, the field responds with clarity. And that clarity is the beginning of a new way of being. The silent code of observation is acting now, as you read, as you feel, as you observe these words. They're not just being read, they're being encoded by you, your way, with your vibration. And that vibration, conscious or not, is shaping what comes next. So observe with presence, because what you observe is also observing you. Seeing and observing may seem like synonyms, but they carry completely different vibrational universes. Seeing is automatic. It's what the eyes do when they are open, even without intention. You see a face, a wall, a phone, without necessarily connecting with what it means, without truly being present. Observing, on the other hand, is something else. Observing is an act of presence. It is a silent encounter between consciousness and what is being observed. It is energy being consciously directed, almost like a wordless prayer. When you only see, the world flows past you as a continuous stream of untouched images. But when you observe, time shifts. The body quiets. The mind calms. And something within you recognizes that there's more there than the eyes can capture. Observing is allowing yourself to feel what's behind the form. It's crossing the visible to touch what vibrates behind it. It's leaving the surface and entering the field. Maybe you've never stopped to notice, but a large part of your life happens on the autopilot of vision. You see the clock and feel rushed. See someone's face and immediately interpret, judge, anticipate. See your own reflection in the mirror and activate a program of criticism or pressure. But how many times have you actually stopped to observe, to look with intention, to quiet the mind and let only the heart see? This difference between seeing and observing is what separates a reactive life from a creative life. Because what you see, you consume, but what you observe, you transform. The act of observing with presence alters your frequency, and when your frequency changes, everything around you starts responding differently. You stop being a hostage to external images and become the point of origin of your reality. Observing is a gesture of choice. You choose to look deeply. Choose to see the other beyond the masks. Choose to see time as an ally, not as a threat. Choose to look at yourself with loving curiosity instead of criticism. It is in this choice that the power of conscious creation resides, because everything you observe with awareness becomes illuminated. And what is illuminated by consciousness can be redefined, released, transformed. Now imagine for a moment, how have you been observing your own life? With what kind of presence do you look at your challenges, at your relationships, at your deepest desires? Are you just seeing, like someone rushing past a shop window? Or are you truly observing, like someone diving into each detail with intention? Maybe time is asking you for this, less haste to see, and more courage to observe. To observe with an open heart, with a present mind, with a soul willing to feel what was once just an image. Because it is in this space of deep observation that healing happens, that patterns dissolve, that flow returns. Observing is a form of loving. It is telling the universe, I am here with all that I am, looking at what is, without running, without judging, without wanting to control. And when you do that, something changes, inside and out. Because reality, like a quantum mirror, responds to the quality of your gaze. If this content touched something inside you, if it somehow made you feel this difference between seeing and observing, like this video and write in the comments, now I observe. Not out of obligation, but as a small rite of presence, as a vibrational seal that tells the universe, I'm ready to look with new eyes. I'm ready to leave repetition and enter the flow. Because change begins like this, with a more attentive, more conscious, more truthful gaze. Not all observation is the same. Just as sound has different frequencies and light different intensities, the way you observe also vibrates on different layers. This subtlety, often ignored, is what defines whether you are living stuck in the past, awake in the present, or co-creating a new future. And it is precisely this differentiation that begins to reveal why so many people, even with good intentions, remain stuck in the same cycles. They are observing, but at the wrong level. The first level is reactive observation. It happens when your attention is conditioned by memories, fears, traumas, and unconscious patterns. In this state, you don't observe what's really happening. You react to what you believe is happening, based on what you've already experienced. Everything goes through the filter of the past. You look at a current situation with the eyes of an old wound. This makes reality respond not to the now, but to the echo of something that should already have been released. It is at this level that most repetitions are born. The pattern renews because the gaze still vibrates in the same place. The second level is conscious observation. Here, there is presence. The mind begins to settle and you can observe what is in front of you without so much interference from what was. You begin to notice details, to perceive your own thoughts as they arise, to choose where to direct your energy. It's a level of attention that already allows for transformations, because the observer begins to differentiate from automatic reaction. You are no longer just a reflection of the past, you become presence, and that presence alone already changes the field. But there is a third level, a point where observation becomes creation, where the gaze not only perceives but instructs. This is where creator observation is born. In this state, you are not just conscious, you are aligned with the unified field, with a higher intelligence that acts through you. Your observation ceases to be personal and becomes universal. You observe not with the eyes of the limited self, but with the eyes of the being that recognizes its connection with everything. It is in this state that subtle miracles begin to happen, because your gaze becomes a channel, and everything that passes through it reorganizes based on the frequency you sustain. Few people access this level consistently, not because it's unreachable, but because the speed of the mind, the ego's noise, and external distractions keep consciousness anchored in the first two stages. However, when there is surrender, inner silence, and pure intention, the leap happens. And once you experience creator observation, it becomes impossible to continue living the same way, because you understand that everything starts there, in the way you choose to look. These three levels are not just concepts. They are real vibrational states that you can feel in the body. In reactive observation, there is tension, judgment, urgency. In conscious observation, there is pause, clarity, choice. In creator observation, there is lightness, intuition, and a sense of deep connection with the whole. The world may be the same, but the way it responds to you changes radically depending on the level of your gaze. This journey, from reactive to creator, is the true transition of consciousness. It is leaving survival mode and entering presence mode. It is trading automatism for intention. It is stopping repetition and starting to manifest. That's why this video is not just content. It is an invitation, a map, a vibrational bridge that can lead you from the first to the third layer. And if you move forward with presence, each part of this journey will dissolve a bit more of what held you back and activate what is already ready to emerge. You don't need to fight to change your life. You only need to change the place from which you observe it, because it is the quality of your observation that determines the type of reality that manifests around you. And the higher this observation, the more aligned the universe's response will be. Not because the universe has preferences, but because it is a mirror, and it can only reflect what you are vibrating as you look. There comes a moment when theory must give way to experience, because intellectually understanding the power of observation is not the same as feeling it in the body, and that's when everything truly begins to transform. The experience of change doesn't happen in the idea, it happens in the vibration. In the instant when the mind slows down, the body quiets, and the inner field reorganizes. And that is what you are now invited to experience. No longer a concept, but a state. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe consciously, without forcing it. Just feel the air entering and leaving. Bring your attention to the present moment, as if nothing else exists beyond this exact now. Don't try to understand, just allow. Now observe what's around you, but without naming. Don't label the sound you hear. Don't describe what you feel. Just observe, as if you were encountering everything for the first time. Notice how this observation changes something internally. When you observe without judgment, without haste, without expectation, something very subtle happens. Time slows down. The body begins to fully relax. The mind, which was running in various directions, begins to make room for silence. And in that silence, a new kind of perception begins to emerge. You start to notice layers of reality that were always there, but couldn't be accessed while your gaze was taken by reactivity. This shift in state is profound, because it reveals that your presence carries a real vibrational weight. When you are truly present, the field responds. You are no longer just in the world. You are with it. You participate, coexist, create. And from this place, you begin to notice things that previously went unnoticed. A detail in the environment, an internal rhythm, a feeling of connection for no apparent reason. These are small signs that you've left mental control and entered the flow of consciousness. And this flow is what we call quantum reality. A reality that shapes itself not from logic, but from vibration. When you access this field of pure observation, even emotional tensions begin to dissolve. Worries lose strength. Resistance melts away, because there's no more struggle, only presence. And presence is by nature healing. It may seem too simple, but the simple, when done with depth, becomes sacred. Observing without judgment, even for 2 minutes, can be more transformative than years of effort trying to fix what doesn't need to be fixed, only observed with awareness. And it's precisely this reversal that begins to rewrite your vibrational field. You are no longer trying to change life. You are changing the way you relate to it, and that changes everything. Perhaps you felt, during this experience, a slight expansion, a silent peace, or even an emotion surfacing. All of that is valid. All of that is part of the release. Because when you observe without wanting to change, without running, without resisting, energy moves on its own. Frequency reorganizes, and your field begins to attract new responses. This is the true experience of change. Not a grand event, but an inner shift. A return to center. A gaze that finally aligns with what is real. And from here, you can begin to choose with more clarity. You can decide what you want to observe, how you want to feel, what kind of energy you wish to emit. Conscious observation doesn't require effort. It requires presence. And that presence, when cultivated regularly, becomes a new state of being. A state where life is no longer a series of reactions, but a living field of possibilities. You've already felt this space. Even if just for brief seconds, you've been there. And that place is you, without the filters. It's your consciousness, before the stories. Now all you need to do is return to it more often. Not as a goal, but as a sacred habit. Because in that state, reality begins to change. And it changes not because you forced it, but because your vibration finally aligned with the truth that was always present. The truth of now. After you access the state of conscious observation, something very subtle but profoundly real begins to reveal itself. Life responds differently, not as an instant miracle, but as a silent reconfiguration. A field of possibilities that once seemed closed begins to open, and what used to be noise becomes signal, because when the frequency of your observation changes, the reality it collapses into also transforms. One of the first effects is the emergence of synchronicities. You begin to notice that certain people, messages, situations appear with perfect timing, as if the universe is speaking directly to you. And it's not that these things didn't exist before, but your observation was too distorted to notice. The reactive mind blocks signals. The present mind recognizes them. And this recognition isn't mental, it's vibrational. You feel that something greater is orchestrating the details. and you feel it without needing to understand everything. Another real change is the dissolution of repetitive patterns. Those cycles that once seemed endless, of conflict, of scarcity, of guilt, begin to lose strength, because they were fed by your unconscious attention, by the old way you looked at yourself and the world. Now, with the new gaze, the same triggers no longer find the same resistance. You start reacting differently, or rather, you stop reacting. And that space between stimulus and response is the portal of healing. That's where the program unravels. You also begin to have more inner clarity, not an intellectual clarity full of analysis. It's a clarity that emerges as intuition, as lucid silence, as an effortless certainty. You know what needs to be done, or what needs to wait, even if nothing around you validates it, because this clarity doesn't come from outside. It comes from the alignment between your inner field and universal consciousness. And this alignment is the result of constant and conscious observation. In addition, there is an increase in spontaneous inspiration. Ideas, solutions, new paths begin to emerge with flow. It's as if the mind stops being a maze and becomes a channel. And this happens because by silencing judgment, you make space to receive. Excess thinking closes doors. Pure observation opens channels. And these channels connect you to a field of intelligence that is beyond linear reasoning. You also begin to notice changes in your body. It responds to the new vibration with more lightness, less tension, more presence. Recurring symptoms that were once seen as enemies now are listened to as messages. And by being heard without resistance, they begin to dissolve. Because the body doesn't want to scream. It wants to be observed with awareness. And when that happens, it reorganizes. The quality of your relationships also changes. You begin to attract people who resonate with your new field. Old conflicts lose meaning. Superficial connections fade. New encounters emerge, not by chance, but by resonance. Because your gaze is no longer needy, defensive, or controlling. It has become open, curious, truthful. And a truthful gaze is magnetic. It invites the other to also reveal themselves. These effects are not promises. They are natural consequences. You don't need to believe in them. You just need to live the process with presence. Because when you sustain conscious observation, reality has no other choice but to respond with coherence. It's like tuning a radio. The stations were always there, but only now can you hear them clearly. Perhaps the greatest change of all is the feeling that something inside you has realigned. A peace that doesn't depend on external certainty. A trust that doesn't need control. A vibration that anchors you even when everything around seems uncertain. Because now, you are no longer reacting to the world. You are observing from a new state. And that state is the point of origin for everything to come. You don't attract what you desire. You attract what your observation is tuning into. And when that observation becomes an extension of your presence, your surrender, and your awareness, the field responds. Not as a mystical promise, but as a vibrational reality that is already available, just waiting for your gaze. We've reached the end of our journey, and something in you is no longer the same, because once you see the power of observation, you can't go back to the automatic way of seeing. Now you know, reality doesn't change when you wait for it to change. It changes when the place from which you observe changes first. Repetition gives way to choice. Chaos gives way to silence. And the old pattern begins to dissolve, not through force, but through awareness. You will never observe the same way again, because now you know the truth. And that truth is not in me, nor in the words. It is in your field. It is in the way you look, feel, and vibrate. If you made it this far, write in the comments, "I changed my gaze." That way, I'll know you completed this journey to the end, and that something within you chose to see differently.